What do you get when royalty meets a runny jar of jam? According to one world champion, an embarrassing mess with no excuse. In a stunning public takedown, America's queen of jams, Donna Collins, has savaged Meghan Markle's latest as ever apricot spread, calling it a failed jam disguised as something more. Within hours of its release, the Duchess's luxury fruit spread was sold out, but not before being branded a culinary disaster by experts who say the ingredients are questionable, the quality is misleading, and the entire rollout may be more about clever branding than real food craftsmanship. Why is one of America's most respected jam makers calling Meghan's product a sham? And what does this controversy reveal about celebrity influence, authenticity, and the true meaning of artisan food? This is more than a jam scandal. It's a showdown between fame and expertise. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It began with a label, a jar, and a name that promised elegance. As ever, a phrase meant to evoke heritage, refinement, and a whisper of timeless sophistication. The kind of phrase you might find in a royal signature or in the closing line of a handwritten letter from a duchess. But for Meghan Markle, the former actress turned Duchess of Sussex turned lifestyle entrepreneur, as ever was never just a phrase. It was a rebranding mission, a new chapter, a public experiment in whether she could turn personal reinvention into commercial success. The product was simple, or so it seemed. Apricot spread. A quaint preserve housed in minimalist glass jars, adorned with delicate script and subtle gold trim, available in two variants, a collector's edition for £10 and a plain version for £7. With little warning and even less detail, it dropped online and sold out within minutes. The internet buzzed. Commentators hailed it as a savvy business move. Meghan's loyal fans congratulated her for entering a saturated food market with what they called class. Supporters compared her to Gwyneth Paltrow or Martha Stewart. Critics scoffed. But it wasn't until America's undisputed queen of jams, Donna Collins, broke her silence that the fairy tale narrative curdled into a full-blown culinary scandal. "There's no excuse for this," Collins said bluntly. "It should be perfect." That quote alone, just 7 words long, ricocheted across social media, splashing headlines from London to Los Angeles. This wasn't a passing critique from an anonymous internet user. This was an outright rebuke from a woman who had built an empire on preserving fruit with the precision of a scientist and the passion of an artist. Donna Collins, founder of the award-winning Jelly Queens company, wasn't mincing words. She wasn't subtle. She was furious. And the public wanted answers. Why was Collins, a respected artisan with more than 40 world championship titles in jam making, unleashing such brutal criticism? What had gone so wrong with Meghan Markle's apricot spread that a seasoned professional would compare it to a failed jam? And more importantly, how did this one jar of apricot preserve, which technically isn't even a true jam, become the latest battleground in Meghan Markle's ongoing war with public perception? To understand the firestorm ignited by this seemingly harmless fruit spread, one must first grasp the broader landscape into which it was born. Meghan Markle's post-royal identity has always walked a tightrope between luxury and relatability, exclusivity and accessibility. After stepping back from royal duties with Prince Harry in 2020, the couple launched numerous ventures aimed at carving out an independent path in the United States. From a multi-million-dollar Netflix deal to a controversial Spotify podcast, Meghan has sought repeatedly to translate fame into influence and influence into enterprise. Yet with each step, she has walked into a storm. There was the backlash over Archetypes, the Spotify series canceled after a single season and publicly questioned for its authenticity. There were ongoing criticisms of her and Harry's security demands, lifestyle choices, and strained relations with both the royal family and the British public. There were legal battles, estranged family feuds, and headlines too numerous to count. So when the as-ever raspberry spread launched in April, critics were ready. And it didn't take long for them to pounce. Some said the raspberry spread was too sweet. Others complained it was oddly textured. But the most biting critique? It was too runny. Impossible to spread on toast, claimed one food blogger. Better suited for a drizzle than a dollop. At first, the reviews were brushed off. After all, what did a few bad comments matter in the face of celebrity marketing power? Meghan's defenders claimed the spread was unique, artisanal, and elevated. But those defenses would crumble when Donna Collins decided to speak. "This isn't jam. This is what happens when jam doesn't work," Collins stated. In a matter of hours, Meghan Markle's apricot spread was no longer a lifestyle luxury. It was an international controversy. Collins went further. If I had a jam that was too runny, I'd slap a label on it and call it a spread. That one line, matter-of-fact, dismissive, and brutally honest, laid bare what few dared to say publicly. Meghan's apricot spread was not a triumph. It was, in the eyes of the professional jam community, a cover-up for culinary failure. From that point, the story exploded. What started as a quaint new product release had spiraled into a debate about food ethics, celebrity influence, and the commodification of quality. Pundits questioned the ingredients. Why were conventionally grown apricots used fruits almost certainly treated with pesticides? Why was pectin, a gelling agent, necessary at all if the product was carefully crafted? And why was this spread not a proper jam by any technical definition, being passed off as an elite artisanal good at a luxury price point? Even more damning was Collins' accusation that the entire operation was a marketing illusion. I don't know who's making her spread, but we all know it's not Meghan, she declared. It sounds like they really don't know what they are doing. That statement, raw, dismissive, and grounded in expertise, hit the nerve of a much deeper question. In the modern age of celebrity entrepreneurship, where fame often substitutes for experience, where does authenticity go? Can a person with global recognition simply walk into an industry, slap a logo on a product, and be taken seriously? Or is that very act an insult to the craftsmen and women who spent their lives honing their work? For Donna Collins and others in the jam-making world, Meghan Markle's apricot spread wasn't just a subpar product. It was a symbol of everything that has gone wrong in the age of influencer-driven commerce. A reminder that no amount of branding, packaging, or celebrity gloss can replace knowledge, labor, and craft. And then came the twist. Despite the backlash, Meghan's apricot spread sold out. Just like the raspberry spread before it. Some saw this as proof of success. Others saw it as a cynical manipulation of demand, limited quantities released to give the illusion of popularity. In jam circles, there was speculation that the batches were so small they barely registered as commercial runs. This wasn't a large-scale rollout, Collins remarked. It was likely a small test batch, meant to appear exclusive. Whatever the motive, the result was undeniable. Meghan had managed to capture public attention again. But at what cost? In the next chapters of this report, we will dig deeper into the mechanics of the As Ever brand, exploring the tension between Meghan Markle's public persona and the actual quality of her products. We will hear from local producers like Maureen Foley, who view Meghan's moves with cautious optimism. We will unravel the meaning of spread versus jam, and why that seemingly minor detail reveals a major fracture in how consumers perceive authenticity. We'll also examine whether this incident is just another media pile-on, or if it signals a growing cultural fatigue with celebrity branding devoid of expertise. But for now, one thing is clear: America's Queen of Jams has thrown down the gauntlet. And Meghan Markle, like it or not, has found herself in the stickiest kind of royal drama, the kind made with apricots, pectin, and a very public dose of humiliation. It didn't begin with jam. It began with reinvention. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced their historic decision to step back from their roles as senior members of the British royal family in January 2020, it wasn't merely a departure from duty. It was a calculated exit from a world governed by centuries-old rules and an entry into a freer, more entrepreneurial lifestyle. The announcement, known colloquially as Megxit, sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace and across the globe. But beneath the surface of royal controversy, a longer game was unfolding. Meghan wasn't retreating, she was repositioning. With her departure from royal obligations came a new identity, one that had less to do with crowns and titles and more to do with branding, storytelling, and influence. The American media was ready. In the land of reinvention, Meghan's story was ripe for a new act. And with the support of high-powered agents, PR strategists, and tech billionaires like Oprah and Tyler Perry, the stage was set for the Duchess to emerge not as a quiet mother of two seeking a private life, but as a mogul in the making. The earliest signs of her strategy were subtle. A lifestyle blog she once ran, The Tig, was mentioned wistfully in interviews. Her focus on female empowerment became a recurring theme. Then came the deals. Netflix, Spotify, Penguin Random House. The content factory of Markle Incorporated began taking shape, each move marketed as a combination of public good and personal storytelling. There were speeches on gender, climate change, racism, and media intrusion. Each public appearance was curated, styled, and promoted with the precision of a seasoned political campaign. But Meghan wanted more than just influence. She wanted a product. Enter the As Ever brand. The name, As Ever, wasn't chosen at random. In the world of brand psychology, it carried a deliberate sense of nostalgia, formality, and emotional intimacy. As Ever sounded like something pulled from a letter written in the 1930s, timeless, gentle, and well-mannered. It was intended to invoke class and consistency, loyalty and elegance. It felt royal without declaring it. And in the world Meghan had come from, where titles mattered but could no longer be officially used for commercial purposes, it was a smart workaround. She couldn't sell something branded as the Duchess jam. But, as ever, that worked. When the raspberry spread launched in April 2024, the website was sparse. There were no elaborate videos, no celebrity endorsements, no masterful marketing campaigns. There were jars, elegantly labeled, shot in soft lighting, and priced as boutique gourmet offerings. £10 for a keepsake edition, £7 for a plain one. The minimalist approach suggested that the product would speak for itself. It leaned on exclusivity rather than accessibility. It whispered rather than shouted. The internet, however, does not whisper. Almost immediately, media outlets across the UK and US pounced on the release. Headlines praised Meghan for stepping into the world of small-batch culinary luxury. Some likened the launch to Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, high-end, niche, and slightly absurd. Others drew comparisons to Blake Lively's short-lived Preserve project, another failed attempt by a celebrity to enter the curated world of artisan goods. But Meghan's fan base was ready. Loyal followers posted photos of their purchases on Instagram and X, some praising the packaging, others praising the taste, although few made actual comments about the utility of the product. It wasn't about whether the jam could be spread on toast. It was about owning a piece of Meghan's news story. For many fans, the jam, excuse the term, spread, wasn't just a condiment. It was a statement. And that was precisely the point. Meghan Markle, despite her global fame and royal status, had long positioned herself as a modern woman rooted in relatable sensibilities. She loved to cook, was a self-declared foodie, and had once published recipes in charity cookbooks. The idea of her creating a gourmet fruit spread seemed like an extension of her identity, homemade yet aspirational. One could imagine her barefoot in a Montecito kitchen, stirring a pot of hand-picked raspberries while reflecting on her journey from Suits actress to Duchess to domestic artisan. But as with much in the world of celebrity branding, reality is rarely so romantic. Very quickly, questions began to surface. Who was actually making the product? Was Meghan involved in the formulation, the cooking, the ingredient selection? Or was this simply another white-labeled product, the kind mass-produced by an anonymous factory and rebranded under a famous name for profit? The lack of transparency set off quiet alarm bells. The As Ever website offered no clarity. There was no information on sourcing, no mention of local farmers, production partners, or certifications. The most detail it provided was the list of ingredients: organic cane sugar, dried organic raspberries, fruit pectin, and in some jars, conventionally grown fruits. That last detail would become especially damning later. In the days following the launch, media coverage stayed relatively positive. It was, after all, Meghan Markle. The press knew that coverage of her brand, good or bad, would generate clicks. But beneath the surface, whispers were growing louder. Culinary insiders began questioning the price point. At £10 for a small jar, expectations were high. And for that price, most consumers expected a product made with skill and intention. But food bloggers who received the product, or bought it directly, noticed an odd thing. It wasn't really a jam. The consistency was off. It was too thin. It slid across toast. It dripped from scones. It was better suited for a glaze than a spread. Some speculated that it had been deliberately labeled a fruit spread rather than a jam to avoid accusations of false advertising. Others believed the product had failed to meet the basic structural integrity of jam and had been marketed with a workaround. Still, it sold out. Not in large numbers, just enough to create the illusion of success. And Meghan's team was thrilled. The product had landed. The headlines had rolled. The foundation was laid for a second act. Which brings us to the apricot spread. Launched quietly in early summer 2025, the apricot version came with similar trappings. Same packaging, same price, same sense of exclusivity. Fans again flooded the site. And again, it sold out in minutes. But this time, Meghan had miscalculated the response. Because this time, Donna Collins was watching. The next chapter will dive into that moment, the exact quote, the fallout, and the devastating professional critique that turned Meghan's dream into a public embarrassment. The moment the apricot spread went live, it was clear something had shifted. Unlike the soft, whispered rollout of the raspberry launch, Meghan Markle's second offering from her, as ever, brand seemed primed for attention, even if the rollout was, on the surface, no less understated. No pre-announcement, no pre-orders, no celebrity endorsements or flashy marketing campaigns. Yet, within moments of appearing on the as-ever online storefront, the product was marked sold out. It was a moment that repeated a now-familiar script. Meghan Markle releases a product, public interest surges, inventory disappears, and the internet erupts in a cacophony of admiration, suspicion, and analysis. But while the speed of the sellout delighted her supporters and impressed casual observers, others couldn't help but ask, how many jars were actually available? And did the rapid sellout reflect real consumer demand, or was it a carefully orchestrated illusion designed to simulate success? The apricot spread, according to the brief description on the As Ever website, was crafted with conventionally grown apricots, dried organic apricots, organic cane sugar, and fruit pectin. Its purpose? A rich and layered flavor perfect for both sweet and savory moments. The language was curated, poetic, and luxurious. The packaging, as with the raspberry version, was delicate and minimal, offering a keepsake edition for £10 and a no-frills version for £7. Both options sold out quickly. But unlike the first product launch, the criticism this time arrived just as fast. Within hours of its release, Meghan's second spread was dissected across social media platforms, food blogs, and lifestyle forums. Screenshots of the sold-out status were posted alongside skeptical captions. Did it sell out? Or was it never there to begin with? Some users claimed they refreshed the site at the exact launch time and still couldn't add it to their carts. Others speculated the spread was only ever available in double-digit quantities, just enough to ignite frenzy, but not enough to satisfy any real demand. Critics pointed to the psychological tactic known as artificial scarcity, a marketing strategy where businesses intentionally limit product availability to increase demand, urgency, and prestige. Whether it's sneaker drops, luxury handbags, or limited edition foods, the formula is the same. Release a small number of items, watch them vanish, and let the social proof of sold-out inventory generate buzz. Meghan, they argued, was not launching a culinary brand. She was performing a masterclass in perception management. Still, perception mattered. And on paper, the launch was another sellout. But beneath the surface, something felt different. The tone of the conversation around the apricot spread was more biting, more incredulous, and far less forgiving than the reaction to the raspberry edition. Maybe it was because the novelty had worn off. Maybe it was because fans who had actually tried the first spread were underwhelmed. Or maybe it was because people had begun to see through the elegant smoke and mirrors of the As Ever brand. And then, everything changed when Donna Collins spoke. Collins, who had remained publicly silent during the raspberry rollout, decided that this second attempt deserved a response. As one of the most decorated and respected figures in the world of artisan preserves, her voice carried weight. With over 40 international awards and decades of experience through her Texas-based company, Jelly Queens, Donna was no Instagram chef or celebrity hanger-on. She had earned her title, America's Queen of Jams. When asked about Meghan Markle's apricot spread during a food trade event in Austin, Texas, Donna didn't hold back. Her words were clipped, unsparing, and brutally honest. It's a real disappointment that Meghan is selling a fruit spread, which is what you make when your jam fails. In the jam industry, a spread is what we call something that didn't work. That quote alone was enough to light a match. It spread across media outlets in minutes. Food and lifestyle journalists rushed to contextualize the criticism. And Meghan's team, usually quick to respond to press narratives, went completely silent. But Donna Collins didn't stop there. It can have the best ingredients, she continued, but if I had a jam that was too runny, I'd slap a label on it and call it a spread. But Donna Collins didn't stop there. It can have the best ingredients, she continued, but if I had a jam that was too runny, I'd slap a label on it and call it a spread. There's no excuse for this. It should be perfect. This was more than a culinary critique. It was an accusation, one that cut straight to the heart of Meghan's credibility as a lifestyle entrepreneur. Collins wasn't just questioning the consistency of the spread. She was suggesting that Meghan's entire product was the result of failure masquerading as success. In professional jam making, a spread is not a term of endearment. It's a euphemism for a botched batch. Almost instantly, public interest shifted from Meghan's sales figures to the technical breakdown of her product. Social media lit up with food artisans, culinary students, and curious consumers all weighing in on the definition of jam versus spread. Jam, they explained, must meet certain standards. High fruit content, proper gelling consistency, no artificial thickeners if possible. A spread, on the other hand, is more ambiguous, more forgiving. It's not required to set in the same way. It's often what results when the jam doesn't quite get there. Donna Collins' comments had drawn a line in the sand. Adding fuel to the fire was Collins' critique of the ingredients themselves. Why should she include conventionally grown apricots, which will have used pesticides, she asked in an interview. And why is she using pectin, which is a gelling agent, unless it's because her spread was too runny? Most spreads don't use pectin. This wasn't nitpicking. For an award-winning jam maker, the choice of conventionally grown fruit, especially when paired with the use of organic dried apricots, felt disingenuous. It was, in Collins' view, a marketing contradiction. If Meghan was trying to sell a premium, luxury preserve, why was she cutting corners with ingredients? Why pair dried organic fruit with fresh pesticide-treated apricots? The inconsistency in ingredient sourcing further undermined the illusion of craftsmanship. At this point, even Meghan's supporters began to grow uneasy. Was the Duchess truly involved in the creation of the spread, or was her name simply affixed to a white-labeled product made in an undisclosed kitchen? Where were the farmers? The co-packers? The recipe development notes? The transparency? It didn't help that Meghan had never claimed to be a food expert. While she had spoken about cooking in interviews, written the foreword to a charity cookbook, and referenced her love for entertaining, there was little to suggest that she had the technical skill or experience required to create a gourmet product. Without behind-the-scenes footage, recipe development stories, or sourcing transparency, the as-ever brand began to look more and more like a facade. And Donna Collins' final statement sealed it. I don't know who's making her spread, but we all know it's not Meghan. It sounds like they really don't know what they are doing. This wasn't just a critique of a product, it was a demolition of Meghan's credibility in the food space. And it wasn't coming from tabloids or online trolls, it was coming from a respected professional in the same industry Meghan was trying to enter. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, the apricot spread remained sold out. But the product's disappearance from digital shelves no longer felt like a mark of success. It felt evasive. The absence of product availability, the lack of transparency, and the scathing professional critiques combined to cast a long shadow over the entire as-ever initiative. Still, the real damage wasn't just to the brand. It was to the narrative. Meghan Markle had long curated an image of thoughtful, deliberate innovation. Her every move was framed as meaningful and strategic. The jam scandal broke that illusion. For the first time, her critics had something tangible, a product they could touch, taste, and criticize with authority. The story wasn't just about a jar of spread anymore. It was about the clash between appearance and substance, branding and authenticity, celebrity power and grassroots expertise. It was a cautionary tale for any public figure hoping to transform personal fame into a sustainable brand. And it was only the beginning. Long before she delivered what many now consider one of the most brutal takedowns of a celebrity brand in recent memory, Donna Collins had built her name jar by jar, batch by batch, recipe by recipe. Unlike Meghan Markle, who soared into global recognition through acting, royalty, and media deals, Collins carved out her empire through fruit, sugar, and fire. She did not inherit a platform. She earned it through the heat of the stove, the discipline of competition, and the quiet consistency of a craftsman's life. When she spoke, people in the food world listened. But when she spoke about Meghan Markle's apricot spread, the world beyond jam connoisseurs tuned in. The moment her words were published, it's a real disappointment that Meghan is selling a fruit spread, which is what you make when your jam fails. The narrative shifted. It was no longer a duchess's luxury side project. It had become a flashpoint of scrutiny, dragged into a spotlight few artisanal food products ever experience. So who exactly is Donna Collins? And how did her opinion come to carry such weight? Donna is the founder and CEO of the Jelly Queens, a Texas-based jam company that has won more than 40 world championship honors in the fiercely competitive world of artisan preserves. The company, which started as a small passion project in Dallas, evolved into an award-winning enterprise known for its integrity, creativity, and culinary excellence. Her flavors range from classic to experimental. Blackberry balsamic basil, rosemary cranberry, peach lavender vanilla, and her standards are infamously strict. Every jar bearing her company's name passes through a process of meticulous testing, precise timing, and flavor layering that borders on scientific. For Collins, a jar of jam isn't just a product, it's a representation of skill, respect for ingredients, and love for tradition. To people in the jam community, Donna isn't just a businesswoman. She's a symbol of the craft. She sits on judging panels, mentors younger preserve makers, and has even represented American artisan food at international events. She's the type of person who knows within seconds whether a batch of jam was cooked too fast, if the pectin balance is off, or if the fruit wasn't allowed to properly macerate. In short, she's a woman who doesn't tolerate shortcuts, especially not when it comes to jam. That's why Meghan Markle's product hit such a nerve. Collins wasn't merely critiquing the taste or consistency. Her frustration stemmed from something deeper, the erosion of values in a space she had helped build. It's not just about the product, she later clarified. It's about what it represents. People like me work for years to build trust and quality into what we create. When someone walks in with a famous name and slaps a label on something half-made, it cheapens the entire field. Her words resonated because they came from a place of principle, and they struck a chord in an age where authenticity has become the rarest commodity. The explosion of celebrity brands, Goop, House of LRNC, Can by Kim, 818 Tequila, and now as ever, has led to a new type of consumer fatigue. People are increasingly skeptical of products driven more by personality than purpose. And Donna Collins wasn't just giving voice to this fatigue, she was weaponizing it. The media latched on. News outlets from the Daily Mail to the Los Angeles Times published her quotes, framing Collins as a no-nonsense truth-teller. Food magazines ran side-by-side comparisons between Meghan's spread and award-winning jams. Influencers posted videos reading her quotes aloud in mocking tones, layering dramatic music over photos of Meghan's jars. But even amid the viral hysteria, one thing remained clear: Collins had struck a nerve because she spoke from expertise, not emotion. Her critique of the apricot spread's consistency, "A spread is what you call something that didn't work," became a meme. People started referencing it in unrelated arguments, turning it into an internet euphemism for failure. "This meeting was a fruit spread," one user tweeted after a bad day at work. "He's not a man, he's a fruit spread," another joked about a disappointing date. In the span of days, the phrase evolved from a technical culinary term into a cultural insult. But Collins hadn't just criticized consistency. She'd also torn into the product's ingredient list, sparking another round of backlash. Her questions: why use conventionally grown apricots? Why add pectin to a spread? Weren't asked to be petty. They were grounded in culinary logic. In the world of high-end preserves, the choice of fruit is paramount. Artisan jam makers often work directly with local farms, selecting only the ripest, most flavorful produce. The use of conventionally grown fruit, especially when paired with the term organic elsewhere on the label, creates an ethical contradiction. It signals compromise. And when customers are being asked to pay premium prices for a product with luxury branding, those contradictions become magnified. Pectin, too, raised eyebrows. In the professional jam-making community, pectin is often a debated ingredient. While it is naturally occurring in many fruits and commonly used in commercial production to ensure consistent results, many high-end artisans avoid it, preferring to rely on traditional methods of sugar balance and cooking time to achieve the desired texture. The inclusion of added pectin in a boutique product suggests either a rushed process or a lack of technical confidence. "These are rookie mistakes," Collins told a food podcast days after her statement went viral. "If someone had brought this jar to a competition, they wouldn't even make it past the first round." Her statements were not personal, she emphasized. They were professional. This isn't about Meghan the woman. It's about Meghan the brand and what she's putting into the world under that name. That distinction between the person and the product became increasingly important as the backlash intensified. Meghan Markle, already no stranger to media criticism, was once again being subjected to a storm of headlines. But this time, the controversy wasn't over her interviews, politics, or family disputes. It was about what she was selling. And for many observers, that made the criticism even more significant. It's easy to criticize someone for what they say or what they wear, Collins continued in her podcast appearance. But when someone puts a product into the marketplace, they are inviting judgment. They're saying, "This represents me." And if that product is substandard, people are going to respond accordingly. Her words echoed a sentiment felt by many in the food world, that the values of real craftsmanship, patience, skill, authenticity are being eroded by branding, celebrity, and shallow aesthetics. Donna Collins wasn't merely defending the integrity of jam. She was defending an entire culture of food makers, artisans, and creators who take pride in doing things the hard way. The reaction from within the food industry was swift and supportive. Other prominent jam makers applauded her stance. Farmers, chefs, and culinary writers began posting threads and think pieces about the dangers of celebrity intrusion into artisan spaces. Donna Collins is right, one chef wrote in a widely shared tweet. Craft matters. Skill matters. You can't replace it with PR. Even those who didn't directly criticize Meghan expressed appreciation for Collins' defensive standards. We're living in a time where everything is being commodified, said one preserve maker from Oregon. It's good to see someone standing up for the value of real work. Still, Meghan's defenders fought back. Some argued that Collins' critique was harsh, uncalled for, or rooted in jealousy. Others pointed out that spreads are a legitimate category of preserve, separate from jams, and that the name alone did not imply failure. Meghan's fans accused the media of amplifying Collins' comments to feed a narrative of negativity and undermine Meghan's attempts at financial independence. But Collins never wavered. She didn't double down with cruelty, nor did she soften her stance. She simply continued speaking from her experience, her kitchen, and her principles. I've made bad jam before, she admitted. Every real jam maker has. The difference is, we own it. We learn from it. We don't turn it into a luxury item and pretend it's something it's not. The honesty of that statement struck a chord far beyond the food world. In an age saturated with curated perfection, Collins offered a rare moment of truth. Her words were imperfect, blunt, even cutting, but they were also sincere. And sincerity, especially in an industry shaped by illusion, has become something of a luxury in itself. By the end of the week, Collins had inadvertently become a folk hero. Her Instagram following tripled. Food magazines requested interviews. TV producers reached out. But she didn't launch a new product line or capitalize on the attention. She kept making jam. Meanwhile, the As Ever brand remained silent. No clarification. No interviews. No updates on restocks. Meghan had stepped into a world where consistency, technique, and integrity were non-negotiable. And whether she realized it or not, Donna Collins had just raised the bar. If there was one phrase that triggered the most confusion, skepticism, and ultimately derision in the wake of Meghan Markle's product release, it was this: fruit spread. To the average consumer, the term sounded innocent enough, perhaps even upscale. But to those in the culinary industry, particularly those in the niche but fiercely devoted world of preserve makers, the label spread didn't just suggest something different from jam. It was a silent confession that something went wrong. The ensuing debate: is Meghan's product really jam? Why is it being sold as a spread? What does that distinction mean? Became a central pillar of the controversy. It was no longer just about flavor or price. It was about identity, classification, and the difference between a culinary craft and a marketing concept. To the untrained eye, jam and spread might appear interchangeable. Both come in jars. Both involve fruit. Both are sweet. But legally, technically, and culturally, they are not the same thing, and the implications of labeling one as the other are more serious than most realize. Let's begin with the basics. In food regulation, particularly in the United States and European Union, there are strict definitions governing what can legally be sold as jam. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration (FDA), jam is defined as a product made by cooking fruit or fruit puree with sugar until it reaches a set consistency and a specific concentration of soluble solids, typically not less than 65%. It must contain a minimum percentage of actual fruit content, and the texture must be thick enough to hold its shape without running. The European Union goes even further. Under EU Regulation 2001/113/EC, for a preserve to be classified as jam, it must contain at least 35% fruit. Some premium categories require 45% or more. There are also rules about added sugars, acidity, and gelling agents. These standards exist to protect consumers from being misled and to preserve the integrity of culinary categories that have cultural significance. By contrast, the term spread has no such legal protections. It is deliberately ambiguous. A fruit spread can contain less fruit. It can have more water. It can use stabilizers or thickeners like pectin, cornstarch, or gums to simulate jam-like texture. In fact, many fruit spreads are created precisely because the product did not reach the required consistency or fruit content to qualify as jam under existing food laws. In professional kitchens and artisan food circles, calling something a fruit spread is often a euphemism, a polite way to describe a failed jam. It's not a compliment. It's a concession. And that's exactly why Donna Collins' comment about Meghan Markle's apricot spread stung so deeply. "This is what you make when your jam fails," she said. "There's no excuse for this. It should be perfect." To people outside that world, the remark might have seemed exaggerated. But to those within, it was a piercing truth. Collins, as someone who judges international jam competitions, knows exactly how important the classification is. In many contests, labeling your product incorrectly, calling it jam, when it's technically a spread, can get you disqualified. It's considered a sign of amateurism at best and dishonesty at worst. Judges use a rigorous set of criteria: texture, sheen, color, fruit integrity, sweetness to acidity balance, and most critically, the set. If it runs off the spoon, if it fails to hold a clean edge on toast, if it pools like syrup rather than resting in place, it's not jam. So when Meghan Markle launched her apricot product with a spread label, "Professionalized zeroed in," was this a calculated attempt to bypass quality scrutiny, or simply a lack of understanding? Some argued it was a clever maneuver. By avoiding the term jam, Meghan had created a legal and perceptual buffer. She could not be accused of violating food regulations because she had, in fact, labeled the product correctly. If it lacked sufficient set or fruit content, no one could cry foul. She hadn't promised jam. She'd promised a spread. But to those who cared about the craft, the semantic loophole only made things worse. "It's not that she called it a spread," explained one preserve maker in an online forum. "It's that she called it that and still priced it like jam. She sold what amounts to a failed product in luxury packaging. That's what we're angry about." Indeed, pricing became another crucial dimension of the debate. A standard 8-ounce jar of premium artisan jam typically sells for $5 to $8 in U.S. markets. Meghan's spread, sold in smaller jars, carried a higher price tag, approximately £10 for the keepsake edition, translating to over $12 before shipping. This placed it not just in the upper tier of preserve pricing, but squarely into the luxury goods category. Consumers were being asked to pay for more than flavor. They were paying for the brand, the image, the association with Meghan herself. But what was actually inside the jar? Beyond the naming controversy, experts scrutinized the ingredient list. Conventionally grown apricots, dried organic apricots, organic pure cane sugar, fruit pectin. The contradictions jumped out immediately. Why combine conventional and organic fruit? Why use dried fruit at all when fresh seasonal apricots were readily available in the California region where Meghan lives? Why add pectin unless the natural fruit-to-sugar ratio was insufficient to create a proper set? Each of these questions pointed to shortcuts, choices made for convenience, shelf stability, or cost control rather than taste or integrity. And that's where the philosophical divide became impossible to ignore. Artisan jam makers work with the seasons. They select fruit based on ripeness, acidity, water content. They adjust recipes on the fly, cook in copper pots, and let the jam speak for itself. Meghan's spread, by contrast, looked manufactured, calculated, distant. As the spread versus jam debate intensified, culinary educators began using the incident as a case study. At a culinary institute in New York, one instructor reportedly held a class where students were shown Meghan's jar alongside an award-winning jam. The goal was not mockery, it was education. The students were asked to read the ingredient lists, compare consistency, and discuss the difference between marketing a product and crafting one. The results were unanimous. Meghan's spread, while attractively packaged, lacked the technical excellence to be considered a true jam. Outside the classroom, the public watched the debate unfold across food blogs, YouTube review channels, and social media platforms. Some defended Meghan's use of the term spread, arguing that it allowed for more flexibility in texture and flavor application. Not everything needs to be jam, one food influencer said. Spreads can be used on cheese boards and marinades on roasted meats. Maybe she's just doing something different. But even this argument failed to gain lasting traction. Because if Meghan had intended to create a culinary innovation, she hadn't communicated it. There were no recipe suggestions, no pairing ideas, no creative branding to show that this was an intentional break from tradition. All there was, in the end, was a jar of vaguely sweet apricot product with a vague label and a sharp price tag. And that ambiguity, intentional or not, became the brand's fatal flaw. In an industry built on clarity, precision, and trust, Meghan's spread felt evasive. It told no story. It had no culinary lineage. It came from nowhere and represented nothing beyond her name. And in doing so, it failed to meet even the most basic expectations of people who understand, respect, and love food. To make matters worse, the backlash wasn't just from experts. Regular customers, those who had managed to order the limited batch, began posting their thoughts online. It's okay, but very watery. It's hard to get it to stay on toast. The jar is cute, but the flavor is bland. These weren't trolls. These were paying customers who had hoped for a premium experience and ended up with something mediocre. The spread versus jam debate had now gone public. Food podcasts devoted entire episodes to it. Major publications ran op-eds. The Washington Post published a feature exploring the cultural meaning of jam and how celebrity brands are reshaping food industries. Even late-night comedians got involved, with one joking, "Next time Meghan wants to spread something, maybe she should start with some common sense." The controversy reached a boiling point when a UK-based preserve guild released a statement indirectly referencing the incident. While it didn't name Meghan or, as ever, the timing and language were unmistakable. The statement read, "Preserve makers should always strive to reflect the true character of their craft. Mislabeling or misrepresenting a product erodes consumer trust and diminishes the value of real artisanship." That, more than any meme or critique, cut to the heart of the matter. The outrage wasn't personal. It was professional. It was about respect for the product, the process, and the people who dedicate their lives to getting it right. In a world increasingly governed by image, where perfection is curated and authenticity is performed, jam remains one of the last honest products. It cannot lie. It cannot pretend. You either know how to make it, or you don't. And the set tells the story every time. From the moment Meghan Markle's apricot spread was unveiled to the public, the branding language invited admiration. Elegant, minimal, organic adjacent, luxurious. But as the media frenzy unfolded and critics began to dissect, not just the presentation but the substance, one critical fault line emerged that exposed what many believed to be the product's deepest flaw: its ingredients. And not just what those ingredients were, but how they were presented, what they implied, and what they ultimately said about the integrity of the product itself. The, as ever, apricot spread was marketed as refined, intentional, and curated. However, its label revealed a blend of contradictory ingredient choices that made professionals in the artisan and organic food world raise their eyebrows with suspicion, and in some cases, flat-out disbelief. According to the official product listing and visible labels, the core ingredients were as follows: conventionally grown apricots, dried organic apricots, organic pure cane sugar, fruit pectin. For ingredients, on paper, it may appear clean, even respectable. But to those with even a moderate understanding of food manufacturing, the list didn't inspire confidence. It raised red flags. The first issue was the inclusion of conventionally grown apricots. In an era where organic has become synonymous with quality, safety, and environmental consciousness, the decision to include fruit grown using traditional farming methods, likely with the use of synthetic pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, felt like a glaring contradiction to the brand's aspirational messaging. Meghan had positioned, as ever, as a high-minded, gentle, almost wholesome venture rooted in values. Using conventional fruit undercuts that promise entirely. Many critics pointed this out immediately. Why not go fully organic? Why the mixed message? If dried organic apricots were already included, why compromise the main fresh fruit base with conventional sourcing? Donna Collins, in her now infamous critique, didn't mince words. Why would you pair dried organic fruit with fresh fruit that's been sprayed? That's lazy at best and dishonest at worst, she said during a food industry panel. People pay attention to that, especially at the £10 price point. Indeed, that pricing structure demands scrutiny. Charging premium prices for a product with non-premium ingredients opens the door to accusations of food gentrification, a practice where standard, often industrial-grade items are rebranded with upscale aesthetics and sold to affluent consumers without substantive upgrades in quality. It's one thing to ask £10 for a jam made from wild-foraged apricots, handcrafted in micro-batches with no shortcuts. It's another thing entirely to charge the same for what may very well be a standard production batch made with commercially sourced, chemically treated fruit. The second issue was the inclusion of dried organic apricots. In theory, this could have been a smart move. Dried fruit can offer intense flavor, added depth, and textural complexity. But experts questioned the reasoning behind this addition. Was it done for flavor enhancement, or was it a compensation for using substandard fresh fruit? I use dried fruit in my winter preserves, especially when certain fruits are out of season, said one professional jam maker based in Oregon. But you don't mix dried with fresh unless you're trying to either bulk up a recipe or mask a lack of freshness. In jam, dried fruit can overpower or muddy the texture if you're not careful. It requires real precision. Given the limited size of the production batch and the brand's claim to be boutique, the use of both dried and fresh apricots seemed more indicative of recipe manipulation than culinary innovation. It also suggested logistical issues behind the scenes. Was the production rushed? Were fresh organic apricots unavailable? Or was the product created by a third-party kitchen that simply didn't prioritize ingredient integrity? Then came the organic pure cane sugar, an ingredient that, oddly, didn't draw much attention but was nonetheless pivotal in the discussion. Sugar, particularly in jams and spreads, plays more than a sweetening role. It acts as a preservative, helps with texture, and assists in achieving the proper gel point. Organic cane sugar is often used in high-end preserves because of its minimally processed nature and absence of bleaching agents or additives. In this case, it was the only organic ingredient beyond the dried apricots, and that raised a subtle but serious concern. Was the word organic being used as a marketing crutch rather than a product standard? Food marketers are often aware of something called the organic halo effect, a psychological trick where the mere presence of the word organic on a label influences the consumer to believe the entire product is organic, even if most of it is not. They, as ever, label leverage this effect brilliantly, if not ethically. By featuring the word prominently, dried organic apricots, organic cane sugar, the average shopper might reasonably conclude that the entire product was organic. But a closer look reveals it wasn't even close. That led many industry observers to call out what they deemed label manipulation, the strategic placement of buzzwords to imply quality without actually meeting the standards. It's not illegal, but it's disingenuous, especially when targeting a demographic that values ethical consumption and food transparency. Finally, and most controversially, was the inclusion of fruit pectin. To those outside the world of food science, pectin might sound like a harmless, even natural additive. It is, after all, found naturally in many fruits, especially citrus peels and apples. But in commercial jam making, pectin is often added in powder or liquid form to help the product gel. It ensures consistency across batches, reduces cooking time, and provides shelf-stable results. For mass production, it's a valuable tool. For artisan preserves, it's often considered a shortcut. Donna Collins said it best: if you know how to cook fruit properly, you don't need pectin. You only add it when the balance is off or when you're rushing the process. The jam community is split on pectin. Some traditionalists avoid it entirely, arguing that a true jam should gel naturally through careful temperature control and fruit-to-sugar ratio. Others allow its use, but only in small doses and only when dealing with low-pectin fruits. But no one in the industry would view its inclusion as a positive indicator of craftsmanship, particularly in a luxury product. The presence of pectin in Meghan's spread implied two things. First, that the jam didn't naturally achieve the proper consistency, and second, that the batch may have been rushed through production. This would align with earlier reports that, as ever, products sold out quickly not because of overwhelming demand, but because of small batch sizes, possibly rushed to meet a press deadline or public expectation. In interviews following the launch, several anonymous sources close to California-based co-packers suggested that the spread was likely produced in a shared-use kitchen with outsourced labor. This isn't uncommon in small-batch food startups, especially for celebrities without their own kitchens or staff. But again, it raises the question. Was this really Meghan's creation? Or was it a private label product repackaged with royalty-inspired branding? Transparency was non-existent. Unlike successful small-batch brands that highlight their farms, showcase their production process, and share stories of recipe development, as ever offered none of that. There were no behind-the-scenes photos, no interviews with jam makers, no acknowledgments of local farmers or ingredient sourcing, nothing but a website with pictures of jars and flowery descriptions written in passive, impersonal language. For a product leaning so heavily on image, the absence of substance became impossible to ignore. The food community responded swiftly. Numerous jam makers began uploading comparison videos, showing side-by-side consistency tests, ingredient integrity breakdowns, and label analysis. Culinary YouTubers reviewed the spread live, noting its lack of flavor complexity, excessive water content, and thin, slippery texture. The public was no less discerning. Customer reviews started appearing on third-party retail platforms and comment sections across social media. Watery and bland. Looks nice on the shelf, but not in the mouth. Tastes like sugared apricot water. While not every review was negative, the pattern was unmistakable. The product didn't deliver on its promise. And the promise wasn't simply good flavor. It was refinement, exclusivity, and premium integrity. Meghan Markle had marketed the spread as a reflection of her values: elegance, simplicity, intentional living. But the inclusion of contradictory ingredients, questionable production methods, and marketing sleights of hand told a different story. One of inexperience, inconsistency, and image over substance. It's not illegal to use conventional fruit. It's not a crime to include pectin. But when you charge luxury prices, when you invoke purity and charm and royalty, and when you build your entire public brand around authenticity and intention, then every detail matters. Especially what's in the jar. Celebrity branding has become a global phenomenon, an engine of influence that converts fame into products, products into revenue, and revenue into a new kind of power, commercial legacy. In today's media-saturated world, it's no longer enough to be famous. Celebrities are expected to be brands. They're expected to sell candles, tequila, makeup, lingerie, food, and even ideologies. In this game of influence economics, Meghan Markle's entry with As Ever was both predictable and ambitious. But her rapid fall into controversy with something as deceptively simple as fruit spread illustrates the very real dangers of taking the celebrity shortcut. To understand why Meghan's jam scandal hit such a nerve, one must understand what this celebrity shortcut actually is. It's the process by which well-known figures, often with no expertise or history in a given field, enter an industry solely through the weight of their fame. There is often no apprenticeship, no study, no field work. Just a concept, a logo, a contract with a manufacturer, and a rollout supported by press connections. It works well when the stakes are low, think scented candles or graphic tees, but when it enters the world of food, where taste, tradition, and trust rule, the shortcut becomes a liability. That As Ever launch was, in many ways, the embodiment of that shortcut. There was no prelude to Meghan's culinary experience. There were no press previews showing her working in kitchens, talking to chefs, or collaborating with artisans. There were no published recipes, no guest appearances on food podcasts, no traceable journey of development from concept to jar. It was just there. One day, the jars appeared online, with soft photos, elegant typography, and royal undertones. That's all it took. But for food lovers and professionals, that's never enough. Food, unlike fashion or cosmetics, is deeply intimate. It requires a sensory relationship, a cultural understanding, and a respect for origin. And when a product doesn't demonstrate that respect, when it feels rushed, outsourced, or superficial, it quickly loses credibility. The public quickly began asking the critical question: who made Meghan's jam? The As Ever brand never provided clarity. There was no co-packer named, no kitchen featured, no mention of how many batches were produced or under what standards. This wasn't an omission, it was a strategy. By keeping the production story vague, the brand leaned entirely on Meghan's image. Her personal story, her fashion sense, her name. It sold lifestyle over substance. That strategy might have worked in other industries. In fashion, celebrity influence often trumps textile knowledge. In skincare, packaging and influencer promotion can outweigh ingredient lists. But in food, especially niche sectors like artisan jam making. There is no hiding. The product must speak for itself. And it didn't take long for professionals to recognize the absence of culinary credibility in Meghan's spread. As award-winning jam maker Donna Collins bluntly put it, "We all know Meghan didn't make that jam." It was a simple statement, but it exposed the core flaw in the celebrity shortcut: detachment. When a product has no visible creator behind it, no hands, no heart, no narrative, consumers begin to suspect that the only thing being sold is the name. And names, even famous ones, cannot save a poor product forever. Moreover, the jam's execution didn't match Meghan's branding. Her post-royal persona has been shaped around intentionality, thoughtfulness, mindfulness, and dignity. The Oprah interview, the Archetypes podcast, the speeches, and the charities have all leaned into this ethos. But a product made without transparency, constructed with basic ingredients and sold at inflated prices, signals the opposite. This inconsistency further widened the credibility gap. Meghan, through the As Ever brand, wasn't just selling a fruit spread. She was selling the idea of care, that every detail had been considered, that every ingredient had been lovingly chosen, that every design choice, down to the embossed lettering on the label, reflected her hands-on involvement. But when critics peeled back the layers, they found no evidence of that care. The ingredients were questionable. The texture was inconsistent. The labeling was strategic, not sincere. And no footage or documentation ever emerged of Meghan inside a kitchen, stirring a copper pot or inspecting a batch of apricots. In other words, there was no process, only product. Contrast this with other celebrities who've entered the food industry with more caution and authenticity. Actress Drew Barrymore, for example, took months documenting the development of her kitchenware line, showing herself testing products, cooking at home, and discussing challenges. Actor Stanley Tucci, known for his food documentaries, has demonstrated deep respect for Italian culinary traditions, working directly with chefs and food historians. Even Snoop Dogg, whose cookbook venture raised eyebrows, filmed himself cooking, sharing real recipes, and displaying genuine passion. The difference is that these figures didn't rely solely on their fame. They leaned into the work. And because they respected the process, audiences respected the product. Meghan Markle, in contrast, gave the impression that the As Ever spread was the result of a brainstorm, not a journey. And therein lies the trap of the celebrity shortcut. The lack of narrative creates a void that critics, professionals, and audiences will fill with speculation, suspicion, and satire. Indeed, as the backlash to her spread intensified, Meghan's silence became more noticeable. There was no follow-up statement, no video explaining the sourcing, no interview about her inspiration, no blog post diving into how her childhood memories of food shaped the flavor profile. In the absence of a story, people assumed the worst, that there was none. That this was a private label product ordered from a supplier, labeled under a royalty-flavored name, and sold for maximum profit. The criticism didn't stop at the jam itself. Journalists began drawing connections between this shortcut and Meghan's broader track record with commercial ventures. Her Spotify deal, once heralded as a groundbreaking partnership, ended prematurely after delivering minimal content. Her Netflix deal, still in progress, has faced delays and creative uncertainty. And now, her foray into the gourmet food space, though brief, had resulted in public mockery rather than acclaim. This pattern led media analysts to a difficult question. Is Meghan overextending herself in industries she doesn't understand? The answer is complicated. Meghan is certainly capable of meaningful influence. Her passion for women's rights, her advocacy for racial justice, and her navigation of a hostile British tabloid culture have all shown resilience and thoughtfulness. But commercial credibility is not the same as moral authority. The former demands not just vision but execution. And execution cannot be outsourced, not when the product must prove its value on a plate. The As Ever spread became a symbol of that commercial misalignment. It was polished on the outside and hollow on the inside. A metaphor, some argued, for what happens when public figures believe their personal story is enough to carry a product without backing it with substance. One British columnist put it succinctly: Meghan wants to be Martha Stewart without spending time in the kitchen. It was a biting remark, but it struck a nerve because it reflected a growing perception that Meghan, for all her poise and media presence, had failed to do the homework required to earn the trust of the very audience she was trying to sell to. In many ways, the celebrity shortcut is seductive. It allows people with platforms to bypass the slow, sometimes humiliating climb that defines most entrepreneurs' paths. It trades trial and error for press releases and launches. But what it doesn't offer, and never can, is sustainability. That has to be earned the hard way. Meghan's shortcut might have brought her product to market, but it also brought the scrutiny faster. And when the scrutiny arrived, there was no depth behind the brand to shield her from it. The damage might have been avoidable. Had Meghan included footage of herself working with jam makers, had she documented the sourcing process, shown trials and errors, connected the product to her story in a meaningful, authentic way, she could have created a buffer. Even if the product wasn't perfect, the effort would have softened the criticism. But she didn't. And now, the perception lingers. The shortcut, in this case, didn't save time. It cost her credibility. While the national headlines screamed scandal and the culinary world dissected every ingredient of Meghan Markle's apricot spread, not everyone within her own California circle was sharpening their knives. Just a short drive from Meghan's Montecito mansion sits the quiet, unassuming headquarters of Red Hen Cannery, a small artisanal jam company that has gained a local cult following for its seasonal, small-batch fruit preserves. Its founder, Maureen Foley, is not just a jam maker, she's a poet, an essayist, and a lifelong steward of food done the slow way. Foley, in contrast to Donna Collins' aggressive condemnation, took a measured but no less pointed approach when discussing Meghan's spread. She did not attack, nor did she outright defend. Her voice instead introduced a rare tone in the public storm around the as-ever brand, curiosity, caution, and a healthy dose of professional skepticism. She may be smart trying to fill a niche, Foley told a local food publication. Spreads can be sweet or savory and used on dishes for all meals, so perhaps it's just clever marketing. It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of someone who understood both the craft of preserving and the delicate ecosystem of artisanal food in Southern California. Foley didn't reject Meghan's move into the jam space, but she made it clear there's a difference between clever marketing and meaningful contribution. To understand Foley's comment, one must understand the world she lives and works in, a world built on intention, locality, and time. Foley is a fourth-generation Californian who comes from a family of